mushrooms have a way of humbling you and kind of almost being like, sit the fuck down
Mm.
and look at how beautiful this tree is. And so I keep coming back to this, um, what's beautiful in the present moment. And this has really been changing my life and the way I see things. And I had this like really impactful realization, on a mushroom journey where I think we, the human race, we chase these numbers and these things
Hmm.
that it's so funny that at the end of the day, it's actually not what matters most to us. And I
And where are you from?
So I'm from Calgary and it's in Canada, so like north of North Dakota.
Oh, okay, okay. So it's not like by Toronto at all.
No, no, no. It's like that's a 5 hour flight from Toronto. Yeah, so
Oh,
Calgary's
okay.
a little bit more northwest of Toronto. Yeah,
Northwest.
yeah.
Okay, okay, cool. All right. Well, thank you for hopping on our podcast today, Chloe. I found you on TikTok. I found your content super interesting, especially the psychedelic stuff and biohacking, and just your. I told you this in our DMs, but you just have this energy to you, and I love it. I love everything about it.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much to me, and I'm super excited to be here. It's really great to meet you, and yeah, I'm excited to dive into it.
Awesome. I know I said some psychedelic stuff. You kind of the topics that you're in, and the space that you're in. But for those who may not or who aren't familiar with you, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I work for a psychedelic company called Psygen. So we manufacture pharmaceutical grade psychedelics for use in clinical trials. And so my role there is I do a lot of kind of business development, project management, and that's really kind of opened my eyes to the whole entire world of psychedelics. And kind of through this role, I started sharing information about psychedelics on TikTok. So I thought, why not? There's not really a lot of information out there, and I really wanted to be a part of, reducing the stigma around it and just sharing like scientifically backed information about psychedelics because I think there's a lot of buzz going on around it, but there's also a lot of misconceptions and some fear. So I just really want to play a big role in breaking through the stigma.
Awesome. What led you to uh, having the desire to work with psychedelics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my background is in chemical engineering, and I also have a degree in biology. And when I was studying, I initially really wanted to go to medical school. One of the things I came up against was I find as a GP or as a physician in Canada or the US, you have such little time to impact a patient. You get 15 minutes, and it's really hard to change somebody's life or have a large scale impact. And so that really changed kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be more on the innovation side of things. I really like pushing the boundaries. I really was interested in like research, tech. And during my studies, I took a lot of like pharmacology and pharmaceutical science courses, and I fell in love with it. I was like, I just thought it was so interesting that you can take a vitamin, a drug, even food, sugar, and it can completely alter the chemistry and the physiology in your body. And so through that, I worked in pharmaceuticals for a little while, and then um, after that, I came back, finished my second degree, and just by chance, I found out about Cygen. They were a company in Calgary, and kind of this is like a sidestep to this, but during this journey, during my education, I had some struggles with my own mental health. And I realized and experienced firsthand that there's so many gaps in the way that we diagnose and treat mental illness. And I was somebody who struggled with childhood trauma, so a little bit of like PTSD there, and then severe anxiety, panic attacks. And when I was in university, I was the type of person that I was playing sports and I was trying to get into medical school, and that was so much pressure, and I had such bad anxiety. And then you go to a doctor, and they're like, well, here's an antidepressant for your anxiety. Here's some ADHD medication because the antidepressants will probably not let you focus. And then here's a sleeping pill.
Mm.
Um, and so going through that experience of like being put on all these drugs and not giving any tools on how to handle or deal with anxiety, that already kind of sparked something in my head, thinking like there's got to be a better way. Not that I'm not saying that, antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication are wrong. I think there's so many ways to treat and handle mental illness. It's all about finding the right way that works for you. But just unfortunately for me, that situation didn't work whatsoever. I really kind of lost my personality in it. And so that kind of started me on this whole journey. And through that, I kind of stumbled upon psychedelics, and it changed my life, completely changed my life. And I was like, there's like no shadow of a doubt. I want to do this, and I want to be in the psychedelic industry.
Yeah, I find that super interesting how well, I find it awesome that you were able to find, a lot of healing through psychedelics. What was the first, I guess, psychedelic that you experienced that helped you with a lot of healing?
Yeah, actually, so the first one would be LSD.
Mm.
It was a really beautiful experience. I was so shocked. And actually, that first experience with LSD, it's probably been, I would say, 3 years, and I still have positive impacts from it. It completely changed the way I looked at nature and beauty. On certain psychedelics, especially LSD, I would say psilocybin, similar to this. It has this way of making you present. It slows down time, it distorts your perception of time, but you have these moments where you're sitting there and you're listening to the birds chirp, and this is what happened to me. And I never felt so much like peace and beauty in that one moment. And these moments, they stay with you years later. And now 3 years later, I wake up in the morning and I listen to the birds chirp, and my first thought, it just takes me back to that moment. And I think I'm like, wow, like this is so beautiful and peaceful. And I think, me 5 years ago, waking up to hearing the birds chirping, it's just like you don't even notice it. You'd be like, oh, whatever, it's birds, I'm gonna get on with my day. And so even just these little changes, just aside from the healing, have been so, so impactful for me.
I think it's super important that you mentioned how with psychedelics, they do have this ability to really ground you and really make you become really present. Because
Mhm.
I remember when I was living in the Bay Area last year, and I had this chocolate bar, and I forget what type of mushroom was in it, but I remember taking it. I remember going. It was like I had a day off from work, and I, really enjoyed being in nature. And I remember going to this park, and I remember just getting my book, had my fruit out, and I was just reading. And I think it was 2 grams. Yeah, a 2 gram bar.
Nice.
So
Okay. So you did a decent dose. Yeah.
yeah, it was a decent right dose, right? And that was like probably one of, and I haven't done it. I haven't really taken a whole lot of psychedelics prior to that. So that was probably more like my second or third time, experiencing psychedelics. But I remember taking it and I was just like really relaxed, and and it felt like I was watching one of your TikToks and you said things just start to, you don't really hallucinate. You really just like to me, I would describe it as you see the life of things. You know what I mean? And you see
Yeah.
the vibrancy, the colors, like are way more bright in a way, and it was a very very super dope experience. And I just remember, and because you had mentioned like the concept of time just kind of like slows down.
Mhm.
I remember just being there. I got there at 11 a.m. and I remember at the end of the day it was like 7 p.m. So I had no idea I spent that much time out there, but it was such an amazing experience. And um, it's so different from like cannabis, because I know there's people who do cannabis as well, and for whatever reason they do it, recreationally or healing. But I, once I started to experience psychedelics, I was like, whoa, this is what I was kind of looking for when it came to my cannabis use. Just more of the relaxedness and just, I don't know. It's a very, very great experience. I cannot like recommend it enough.
Oh,
Um,
I'm so happy that you had that. That's amazing.
yeah, it was dope. And I remember, I think I was watching one of your other videos as well. And you had mentioned LSD was one of your like your favorite ones, right?
Yeah, I have a bias towards LSD. Yeah,
Okay.
it's definitely favorite.
LSD. So see, this is what happens when I think of LSD. I think of more of like that. You take it when you go to a concert, and it's just a very trippy experience. I've never tried LSD.
Yeah.
Um, But can you like demystify it and like debunk it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the issue with LSD is comes from the history in the 1960s. So LSD got very popularized. However, it was used a lot by kind of the hippie culture. And so Nixon started this war on drugs, and it had nothing to do with the safety of LSD. And actually, up until the time of them banning it and making it illegal, there was around 1,000 studies on LSD. So people say that the criminalization of LSD and psychedelics is one of the biggest medical oversights of all time. So they were using LSD a lot to treat alcohol use disorder, depression, things like that. And so this was becoming and gaining a lot of popularity. And then because of this, with this war on drugs, they were able to really kind of control and take some power away from the communities that were kind of against the Vietnam War, things like that. And the US, especially, and a lot of other countries, put forth a lot of propaganda. And it's kind of crazy to see how well the propaganda worked because when you tell people about LSD or acid, people think, oh my gosh, like am I going to jump off a roof? Am I going to go crazy? And no, none of that's true. Actually, LSD has one of the highest safety profiles of any drug. So saying that you can take 500 times the dose that is an effective dose. So 100 micrograms would be an effective dose. You could take 5,000 of that and still be okay. You might cause yourself some very severe mental damage. I don't recommend anybody do that ever. But from a physiological, like toxicology standpoint, it's one of the safest drugs that you can do. A lot of drugs don't have anywhere near as safe as a safety profile. So that should help demystify it a little bit. And comparing it to, I think an easy comparison, because most people would be more familiar with psilocybin or psilocybin mushrooms. The visuals you get on LSD on a normal dose, they're quite similar to mushrooms. It's visual. It changes. You see neon colors, maybe some kind of like waviness. As you described, it's like everything comes alive. Everything's ebbing and flowing and so beautiful. And in my opinion, I slightly prefer the visuals on LSD, but they're not different. And you don't, at least at normal doses, because I personally haven't experienced any kind of crazy, 1,000 microgram doses, but at a normal dose, you will not see things that aren't there. You'll just, it'll enhance the world around you, but you're not going to see, a dragon in the kitchen. That's not going to happen. You're not going to hear voices. You're just going to be very connected to yourself. I kind of describe the difference between the two. And like, this isn't science fact whatsoever. This is just like my comparison of LSD versus psilocybin. Psilocybin is kind of like a problem solver. So if there's something going on and you need to like think through a problem, it's great for that. If you're like really experiencing something that's going on, you're like, I need a solution for that. And I think LSD shows you the beauty that already exists in the world. That's kind of how I compare them to like a feeling. But yeah, both exceptional psychedelics. But yeah, LSD is a pretty incredible and powerful experience. Obviously, all psychedelics are to be respected. They're not for everyone, especially if you have a family history, personal history of schizophrenia or psychosis. You should definitely steer clear of psychedelics then.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I let's see. I've done psilocybin maybe like twice, I think. Yeah,
Mhm.
twice. And they're the actual what do you call it when they're the actual mushrooms? They're the actual mushrooms.
Yeah.
And very similar experience, very relaxing. I think the very first time I took it was like a 1.5 grams, and I,
Mhm.
just brewed it in some tea, drank it, and I was at
Mhm.
home, and it was just super relaxing. I just remember going to sleep, and I just remember going to sleep, and it felt great though. It was probably one of the, you know, best sleeps I've ever gotten in a while, and but let's continue on that psilocybin vein.
Yeah.
Um, what are some of the best ways um, to consume it and partake in either like a starting with microdosing to full on trip.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay, this is a phenomenal question. I'm just trying to decide whether I start with microdosing or tripping. Um, I think, ways in which to ingest it can be kind of similar for microdosing or tripping. I always recommend, having it in a pill form, makes it easier. Mushrooms, if you've done them before, it's not a pleasant taste. It's not candy. Um, so many people may grind them up and put them in smoothies. Mushrooms can be hard on the stomach, so taking with ginger is very helpful. Usually at a microdose, you don't really need to take with ginger. And there's a lot of things that can really help enhance your experience. And so for microdosing, um, a lot of nootropic mushrooms are really beneficial to take with microdosing. So a mushroom I really like, and it's also been recommended by Paul Stamets, one of the leaders in mushroom cultivation and kind of pushing the boundaries of this field. He really recommends taking the microdoses with lion's mane and niacin. Lion's mane helps to improve cognitive function and memory. That's a supplement I swear by every single day for better brain health. It's amazing. And niacin will just increase the blood flow, just making it more effective. There's lots of other things you can take with microdoses. Some people take ginseng, ginger is another one. A lot of different herbs, like I'm going to botch this, but rhodiola rosea. That one's great for focus if you have ADHD. And then depending on where you source your microdoses from, depending if it's legal, I guess one of the only really legal areas right now is Oregon. But some places will sell you blends that have all these different herbs and ingredients in them.
Okay, okay. Um, so is it, you said in a pill form, and then you could also put it in a smoothie. I heard some people like they would make like pizza with it too. Have
Yeah,
you heard of
one
that?
one thing to keep in mind with mushrooms is that psilocybin does break down at 80 degrees Celsius. Sorry, I don't know
Mm.
what that is in Fahrenheit at the top of my head. Um, but a lot of people will put it in tea as well because, and this is more so, we're talking about trip doses. So basically anything between 1 gram and like 4 or 5 grams, that's when it starts being really difficult on your stomach. So many people will steep the mushrooms as tea instead of ingesting the whole thing, and that will really kind of prevent that gastrointestinal upset that can be quite like uncomfortable and make you feel quite gross. I kind of compare it to having like a candy hangover. If you were to eat a whole bag of like Sour Patch Kids,
Hmm.
that's kind of sometimes how it feels. Um, so yeah, steeping that in tea, and then it's just important to not put it in boiling hot tea. Wait for the tea to kind of cool down a little bit, or else you're going to destroy some of the psilocybin and psilocin that's in there.
Ah, okay, okay. Yeah, I'm interested in doing like a full on like trip with psilocybin because I don't think I haven't had like a terrible experience, but I haven't had the experience I guess I was more so looking for and that I've heard that you can have with psilocybin. And so I'm interested in, you know, doing what you said and just waiting for the tea to cool down and then throw it in there and then see where we go from there. Have you had like a full on trip with psilocybin before?
Yeah, I've had a few really great impactful ones. I do psilocybin trips regularly. It's my way of processing or dealing with things. I always know it's kind of time for me when I get kind of described as being like almost like emotionally congested. I feel this like dark energy in my chest, and I'm either like stressed out about something or need to heal through something. I'm like, okay, there's something going on with me. Let's use psilocybin, let's connect with ourselves, and let's, deal with this and figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And so it's a really impactful and, powerful compound for connecting you with yourself and for finding solutions. And it's a really beautiful thing. And I think, it's really important for people to know and realize that every time with most psychedelics, every experience is different. It completely depends on your state of mind and where you are going into it. And setting intentions is so important. And then also integrating. And I think, there's this misconception of, especially like people that have read about the clinical trials, because there's been, psilocybin clinical trials for depression. And people are saying that, okay, there's people that have done psilocybin twice, and then 67% of that population is no longer showing signs of depression. And that's incredible results. But people also need to keep in mind that like there is work that you have to do alongside it, right? It's not just that like 8 hours on psilocybin, boom, your life has changed.
Mm-hmm.
It's this, integration, setting up beforehand, doing the deep work on the journey, and then doing the deep work long after, because you're going to have some amazing realizations. And you can have all the amazing realizations in the world, but if you don't implement them into your life, then you're not going to make those changes, right? For the most part. I mean, there's some realizations that you have that change your life like this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that integration piece and that setting intention. And for some people, setting an intention can be anything from, I want to find my purpose, and, am I on the right track, to I just want to have fun, or show me how beautiful life is. But that intention and mindset going into it is really, really important.
Yeah, I think intention is super important. Because I don't know where I heard this. I think I was listening to a podcast and they were saying how before you're doing before you like do psychedelics is always probably like one of the best things you can do is actually like speak to it. Like it sounds kind of weird, like speak to the mushroom or speak to the LSD and say, hey, like, and just tell her your intention. Like I want to, like kind of like you were saying, like I want to heal, or I'd like more insight on, some of the blockages that I'm experiencing in my life right now. Yeah, do you speak to your mushrooms or whatever
I
psychedelic you
Yeah.
participate in?
It's funny because like I'm the type of person that like straddles the line between like woo woo and like science.
Yeah.
So I am very science oriented, by kind of education and background has pointed me in this direction. But ever since, my experience with psychedelics, it just makes you believe. You're like, oh my gosh, everything is energy. There's so much more than science and data, and there's things in this life that math and numbers and physics cannot explain. Um, and so kind of following up on that is, yeah, there have been times where I speak to the mushrooms, or, or you just, with microdoses, sometimes I'll just hold them up to my heart and I'll, before I take them, I'll be like, okay, this is my intention for today, or let's just have a fun day, or let's let go. And I do believe, that there is spirit in plant, because, I guess in the mushrooms as well, being more specific, they're fungi. Somebody might call me out on that. But I do believe there's spirit in plant. And, you hear this a lot too with people that have done, ayahuasca and San Pedro. It's like where they really feel like they connect to the spirit of plant. And I was actually even hearing, there's a company, and I cannot remember the name off the top of my head, but they do these kind of like, almost like at home, like not psychedelic journeys, but almost like a kind of a cleanse and a spiritual process where you drink this rose tea. And at the end of the process, you become so kind of cleansed, and you understand the spirit of the the rose, and each plant, in Eastern medicine has an ikros, and it's like their song. And there's
Hmm.
people that I've heard of and that I've known that have done this process, and they're like non-believers. They're like, there's no way I'm gonna like drink this rose tea and like feel super connected to it or have it like speak to me or work through me. And then at the end of this process, they're literally like, holy crap, I can literally like whistle the ikro of this like rose plant. And it's really interesting. I haven't
Yeah.
personally done it, and I will, and I'm gonna track that process. So that's like definitely something that's next up on the list of me to tinker with. But it's really powerful and impactful if you do tune into that and believe it.
Yeah. Another guest that I had on, Emily McDonald. I found her, that conversation interesting as well because, like yourself, she's has a science background, but we were able in our conversation to kind of bridge spirituality and science together. And if you ask me, I think science explains spirituality, and spirituality also can confirm science.
Mhm.
Would you agree with that?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Like I think there's just like a marriage of the two.
Hmm.
And we even see in clinical trials now that like show that your mindset can impact how your body reacts to things. Like how you think about things can really even just change, the chemistry and the physiology of your body. So there is this connection and this overlap.
Yeah, it's super 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 interesting. Have you ever done an ayahuasca ceremony?
No, I have not, and I've been dying to. So that's definitely on my bucket list soon.
Okay, yeah, I'm right there too. Like I'm very curious to experience it and see um, what the ayahuasca spirit. A lot of people call ayahuasca mama, like a
Yeah.
mom, and I'm really curious to see like what she's gonna do and what she's gonna bring up. I'm not looking forward to because I hear like you're either gonna puke or you're gonna shit it out.
Oh yeah, you purge. You
Yeah.
cleanse. You cleanse out all the demons.
Yes, and I'm like, dang, I was thinking about it like, if I do, no, when I do, I might have to end up wearing an adult diaper just in case it goes out that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At least like everyone else is probably having the same experience, which I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but
Right, right. Um, but yeah, that's super super interesting. Are you spiritual at all too, or
oh, absolutely. Very spiritual.
okay, okay? Do you like meditate and stuff and
Yeah, I meditate. I meditate regularly every single day. I, meditate or do breath work in the morning and have my crystals. I think there's like a pile behind me. Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Um, and yeah, I just like, I believe that everything is energy. And yeah, it's important to be good energy, spread good energy, surround yourself with good energy.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Tell us a little more about your experience with psilocybin and um, what was something you learned from experiencing psilocybin?
Ooh, oh, there's so many. It's hard to pick one. I think the reoccurring theme for me lately is presence. And this, I keep coming back to this every time I journey. And I think I just haven't fully learned the lesson yet. But I had a really impactful journey a couple weeks ago. And I was just in my head with imposter syndrome and stress and what am I going to do, or I'm not far enough along. I should be a millionaire by now. I should have a mansion, be traveling the world. I should be all these things, or better, more accomplished. And mushrooms have a way of humbling you and kind of almost being like, sit the fuck down
Mm,
and look at how beautiful this tree is. And so I keep coming back to this, um, what's beautiful in the present moment. And this has really been changing my life and the way I see things. And I had this like really impactful realization, on a mushroom journey where I think we, the human race, we chase these numbers and these things
Hmm.
that it's so funny that at the end of the day, it's actually not what matters most to us. And I had this moment, even with, my partner, my boyfriend, and I was putting work and my goals way above him.
Mm.
Like, I wasn't, present enough in the relationship. And I had this thought and I was like, I love my job. I love the work that I do. But if I lost my job tomorrow, I would be okay because I would find another one. But my partner, my family, and my friends, if I lost those people tomorrow, that would be devastating. That would completely turn my life upside down. So
Hmm.
it's really, the mushroom journeys I've been having lately are teaching me to look at life completely differently and to value the little moments and the little conversations and to realize, it's important to chase dreams and it's important to have goals, but also, it's so important to fall in love with the moment and, what we actually do look back on our life and, appreciate and are grateful for are these like moments of, peace, beauty, stillness, moments of connection with other people. It's not the race, you know. I mean, the raise is an exciting thing sometimes, but that's so fleeting. And then it's on to the next one and on
Hmm.
to the next one. And so this is kind of, yeah, a reoccurring theme for me lately.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people can relate to, especially me, because that's a lesson that I'm currently, walking through right now as well. Is I'm learning to kind of like yourself, I'm going through some imposter syndrome, or like even I have the tendency to fall into the trap of comparison.
Ooh, yeah.
Comparing myself to so and so. I should be doing this right now. I should be making this much money. I should be married right now. I should have this and that. And it's just super dangerous trap to
Mhm.
fall into. And what psychedelics has done for me has, like like you said, remind me of what's important, and because we're all on this journey called life for each
Mhm.
other. You know what I mean? Like, you're doing what you're doing because one day you want to have that. Maybe you want to have the family,
Mhm.
or you're doing it for a bigger purpose. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's one of the beautiful things that psychedelics does, is help remind you that, hey, like, you know, yeah, you have your goals and your ambitions, but remember why you're doing it. You're doing it, like, for myself. I just want to be the best big brother I can to my siblings. You know what I mean? Like, I want to help lead them in a way where they can make a difference in not only their lives but the lives around them. And so,
Oh, I love
psychedelics.
that so much.
Oh, thank you. And psychedelics do that. They help you, remind you of those lessons. And so, I'm glad you brought that up. Um, so, continuing on the vein of psilocybin, let's talk about, not continuing on psilocybin, but let's go back to LSD.
Yeah, yeah.
And because I'm not too familiar with it, it's
Mhm.
is it like a tablet, or are they like pills?
It's actually LSD. So most commonly, I guess what people would experience on the street is LSD is so incredibly potent. So they put it on little pieces of paper, and like pop culture, you see people with those like caps.
Yes.
It's like, you
Hmm.
know. So that's traditionally how it's distributed because it's so potent that you take it from this vial and you put it on this piece of paper. I could see, there's lots of companies right now working on different formulations. I don't think in a medical world it'll come on a piece of water paper because that's the most accurate. I think it'll be definitely formulated pills, but that's how it kind of has been, I guess, on the streets.
Okay. All right. And then DMT. Excuse
Mhm.
me. Have you participated?
No, not DMT. I've been learning a lot about it. A lot of my friends have tried it, so that's kind of coming up next for me too, as well.
What were their experiences like?
Oh my gosh, people have the craziest stories on DMT. I think DMT, they call it the spirit molecule, and so a lot of people have. Um, so kind of just to clarify, so DMT, you can pure DMT, you can inhale. So inhale vaporized DMT, so you smoke it. That's something that's around, a 20-minute high, and kind of just like blasts you off to almost like a different, like, universe. And so this is where you see people often say they see, godlike structures, even aliens, just crazy, crazy, crazy visuals where they feel like, I have a few friends that are atheists and they were like, there's no way that there's not something else after that experience. And so I
Mm.
think it just gives you this feeling of, it being, there's more than that. And then DMT is also the active component in ayahuasca. But ayahuasca is kind of an umbrella term where you're combining DMT with an MAOI, a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. And so when you ingest DMT just by itself, it doesn't do anything. It's not active. There's no psychedelic effects. But when you combine it, then you have a psychedelic experience. And so there's different ways to take DMT. There's a lot of really interesting clinical studies going on right now for DMT, like DMT for depression. I'm really interested in DMT post-stroke. So Algernon is a pharmaceutical company, and they're actually looking at DMT for stroke recovery. So what they're finding is DMT, as well as many other psychedelic substances, they increase brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is kind of like human growth hormone for your brain. So it causes growth of new neuron cells, and this can be quite impactful for healing from stroke. So it could potentially prevent, post-stroke hypoxia, because there's a lack of blood flow in certain areas of your brain when you have a stroke, and then that becomes quite toxic, and the tissue dies. And so it can prevent that damage and then also help patients to heal faster. So it's just in phase 1, but I think it's a really exciting study that I think, if it is successful, can really impact a lot of people.
Yeah, you definitely see the trend, as psychedelics continue to become more legalized. I'm super excited to see the research that'll be done as well, and because I think it's, like growing up, you kind of have this belief like, oh, like just kind of stay away from it, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
when you experience it firsthand, you're like, oh my gosh, like this stuff is amazing. Like, why would they keep this away from people? And so I'm super looking forward to seeing what comes out on it. Um, but a lot of people are dealing with. I feel like a lot of people these days, are very high strung on anxiety and depression. What is one or what's a good starter like psychedelic? I guess where can people start if they have high anxiety or battle
Mm-hmm.
depression?
I think just kind of given the current climate too, I think psilocybin mushrooms are usually like one of the most approachable for people. And you can even start with microdosing. That's usually how a lot of people kind of start getting into it. They start really, really small microdosing, especially if they're really nervous. And then they realize, oh, okay, this isn't some crazy thing. A microdose should be fairly subperceptual. The change should be kind of like the same thing as having a cup of coffee or
Mm.
two. It's not the same effects, but it's that kind of like degree. And so you're not going to microdose and be completely different. You're just going to be a little bit more focused, maybe a little bit more energized, maybe a bit more introspective. But it's not going to completely like alter your perception or your reality. And then some people kind of find that they like that and they're like, okay, I feel brave enough to do a psilocybin journey. Um, so I would say, psilocybin would probably be one of the most approachable. Also, ketamine, just given its legal status. So ketamine is legally available in Canada and the US. That's another, fantastic psychedelic for depression and anxiety. It's one of the only psychedelics that you can take in an emergency crisis. So, for example, like suicidal ideation, it can kind of yank somebody out of that state for
Mm.
up to like from like maybe even a week to sometimes even like 3 weeks or a month. It can really just pull somebody out of that. Whereas other psychedelics, if you were in a state of having panic attacks or crisis mode, maybe there was like a death or, something going on and it recently happened, you wouldn't really want to do psilocybin in this like crisis state. You'd want to make sure you were a little bit more leveled out.
Gotcha. So psilocybin is probably a good place for people to start and
Mhm.
kind of ease their way into
Mhm.
like a hero dose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How much is a hero dose?
Ooh, I would say anything like over 5 grams.
And that's when
Usually.
you're like in another dimension, right?
Yeah, you're going.
Have you tried a hero dose?
I think my biggest dose was four.
Four,
Yeah,
okay.
4.5-ish is probably got up to there. And yeah, it was very psychedelic. Great experience though. I've had some friends get up to like 8 or 9.
Oh
They said it was
gosh.
just crazy. So
Yeah. I can't imagine that because I don't know. You hear on some podcasts people will talk about some of their ayahuasca experiences and
Mhm.
their psilocybin experiences, and you hear them talk about how they'll start seeing the machine elves and all these different creatures, and you get to see how like you know the geometric pattern of the world. Like it's very, very, very trippy experience, right?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
Oops, I think I lost your audio. Are you still there?
Oh, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, yes.
Okay, good.
For some
Yeah.
reason, Siri like she like wants to interrupt and like she'll just try to chime in. I'm not talking to you, Siri.
Just asking.
Oh, there she goes again. I gotta stop saying that. Okay. Um, but are you good on time?
Yeah, yeah. What are we?
Okay.
Oh yeah, we got time.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yes. Tell us a little bit more about your journey, though. Like, what do you hope to do with the work you're doing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's an amazing question. And something I'm kind of, working through a lot in my own head. But right now, for me, it's about, sharing information and making people feel less afraid and more comfortable with psychedelics, and really decreasing the stigma. And that's what I'm trying to do through Instagram and TikTok. Well, TikTok mostly. I haven't really shared much on Instagram. I think I'm working the confidence to doing that. But with my grandma on there,
Yeah.
talking about acid trips maybe isn't the best thing to do on there. But so that's kind of like step one for right now. For me, I really want to um, start going to retreats and experiencing all sorts of styles of healing around the world. I think I have this huge passion for for retreats and for healing, and then also kind of bringing my background into this is really passionate about biohacking and tech and healing. So I think my dream one day would be to have retreats where you're incorporating testing, tech, wearables, where you can heal and then also learn things about yourself that help you to live your best possible life. Everything from doing blood work and finding out what you should be eating, how you should
Hmm.
be meditating, things like that, like incorporating all of these things into a retreat. So that's something that I'm kind of poking around in right now, and we'll see where it goes. And
All right. I know you mentioned biohacking, and one of the ways you can biohack, I know you can do cold showers, right?
yeah,
Um, what are some other different ways? Well, first let's talk about what biohacking is. Can you give us a definition of what that is?
yeah, I think whew. So I would define biohacking is using a tool to alter the physiology of your body to perform better or to live longer. So and that tool can be something like cold showers or breath work, or it can be supplements. But you're basically just using something to have an adaptation in your body to help you live longer or perform better.
Gotcha. Okay. What are some of the ways that you incorporate biohacking into your life?
Yeah. So big one for me is cold showering. That is my favorite way to wake up every morning. It's incredible for reducing inflammation and for anti-aging. Even so, cold showering can cause your skin to produce more collagen. So that's what gives your skin elasticity. So even that, right? You're gonna age slower by doing things like that. Another big thing for me is intermittent fasting. This has been huge for me. That's also another thing to, prevent inflammation. Um, I follow a lot of, Andrew Huberman's big on
Yes.
biohacking, love him, David Sinclair. So it just seems like the way if you want to live longer, then you should eat less often. And for me, I just found like my mental clarity has gone up so much. And I'm somebody who like always struggles a lot with fatigue and bloating. So if I don't eat before noon, I have so much more energy. My digestion's better. So that's been really awesome for me. Um, Breath work. I love breathing. Such a, I'm somebody who struggles. I'm a bit ADHD. So, um, and this is maybe a hack for anybody that really struggles with meditating, because sometimes for me to just sit there and focus on my breath, like my brain is like going like ping, 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 like all these
Yeah,
ideas. And so I started using more breath work. So the difference in between, breath work and meditating is you're really manipulating the breath with breath work. So you're changing the pace, you're like altering it a lot versus just watching it kind of go in and out of meditating. And I find that was a lot more engaging for me. And you can kind of get yourself in these like very, um, just like energetic, beautiful, calm, peaceful state. It's like
absolutely.
taking a bath and like dopamine and serotonin and norepinephrine. It's an amazing way to start your day.
Yeah, I love meditating. Recently, I've been very consistent with it, like maybe the last 2 weeks, just every morning doing 20 minutes, just, putting on some, a frequency and just focusing on my breath. I do notice though, like you were saying, because my brain tends to do the same thing, and my mind seems to like think about a trillion different things when I'm trying to focus on my breath. Um, is there a point where you like that doesn't happen anymore? Like, can you get to a place where like you're just focusing on the breath and you hear nothing, or it's just you kind of have to accept it and just more observe the things that kind of go through your mind? Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, totally. No, it totally makes sense. And I think the point of meditation isn't to like have nothing in your head. I think it's, the ability to slow down and then watch your thoughts and experience it happen and not get caught away in them. And so there are times where I can get really still and I can just kind of watch thoughts pass in my mind, but very rarely is there like nothing popping up for me.
Yeah.
I think everyone kind of has their own little squirrel brain, and it happens, and we have thoughts, and I think that's not the point of it. Is to just not have any thoughts, and if you're having thoughts, you're not doing it right. It's just to, can calm your mind down and to learn how to be present and how to be at peace, just sitting there with no stimulation, and not getting caught up in the thoughts. And that applies to so many things outside of meditation. When something bad happens in your day and you can kind of just sit there and breathe through it. You're like, okay, well, that's just another thing I have to deal with versus just getting caught up in that and having this mentality of like, oh crap, this bad thing happened. Now it's ruining my day, whatever. And
Hmm.
meditation really helps you with that. And it's an incredible anti-aging hack. There was just some results of a study posted that said that people that meditated on average had younger brains, that were like 7 years younger than people that didn't, and I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I agree as well. Meditation is it's funny because like literally every single conversation I've had on this podcast, like we've somehow talked about meditation. And I think it just goes to show like it's one of those things like you don't need to go to the Amazon to do. You don't need to buy something. Like you don't have to do anything other than just sit with yourself and just focus on that moment. Close your eyes, try to feel the moment. And yeah, it's very, very, a lot of healing can come from it. And I think a lot of clarity as well can help you focus. It's a super amazing, um, yeah, it's a biohack, right? Meditation?
Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's an amazing biohack, and I encourage anyone who's listening or watching, like you could find something on YouTube, you know what I mean, and like just sit there for 20 minutes and meditate.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
What about for those people who, you know, you can't just meditate while you're, at your desk, or
Mhm.
if you're a barista, you can't just with your apron on just start meditating in that moment. What are some things that people can do, when they're experiencing these high tension moments, especially in the heat of their work? What
Yeah.
do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, a couple breathing exercises. I think this one's from Andrew Huberman. It's the physiological sigh. So it's just two quick inhales through your nose and a long exhale through your mouth, and that should bring your heart rate back to baseline. So whether that's like you're working out, your heart's racing, or you're about to give a presentation, and this is what I do. Like right before I'm about to present, I'm just like, and then it all goes still.
Mm.
Um, And then, if you are in a cubicle in a quiet room and it's still weird for you to go like, um, I recommend, this is just something I just started, but it's called Buteyko breath. And so it's literally just the act of breathing in and out of your nose. And you're just taking air in as slowly as possible. It's like sipping the air. And I try to like almost feel it going in and out of my nostrils.
Mm.
And it can really relax you. And then you become really focused on your air. So you just sit there, and focus on the air going in and out of your nose as slowly as possible.
Yeah.
And sometimes too, like if my heart's racing, I'll just put my hand on my heart and breathe like that and just extend my exhales.
Yeah, that's a super interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because there's something about like when you do this,
Yeah.
it's very um it's very relaxing. You know what I mean? It's super like, I
Yeah.
don't know. It maybe it just has something to do with like the act of like, the physical touch that's on your heart area. But
Yeah.
even as I'm doing this now, I feel like, wow, like I feel
Right.
super
It causes
relaxed.
like an increase when you like hug yourself or like because hugging actually increases oxytocin. So this is like
Hmm.
your body is experiencing a hug from yourself, and that's that like rush of like love and safety. Um, And yeah, and you can do that, if you're in a meeting, you're like having stress and you just like put one hand here and you make it look like you're like
Hmm.
rubbing your chest or something, and then just take a really long exhale and that'll kind of bring you down.
Yeah, yeah. It's just some little biohacks for anyone who's listening. Like you can, when you're in the heat of it, just hug yourself.
Yeah.
Everything will be great.
Yeah. Hug yourself and breathe. It's like if you can keep breathing and figure out how to breathe, you can make it through anything in life.
Right, right. Yeah, breathing is super underrated hack.
Right?
Um,
Yeah.
as we near the tail end, we're kind of reaching about an hour in. Got a couple questions to wrap it up. What do
Yeah.
you what do you define as success?
Ooh. I think, I think success for me, I almost define success as fulfillment, as living a life that's true to you. That, you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm living a life that I'm excited about, that it's what I want to do. It's a life that I've built and it resonates with me and it might not resonate with anybody else. And so I think it's that aspect of fulfillment and peace and joy. And I think that kind of goes side by side with alignment. And for me, like, as we talked about, these psychedelic journeys, success for me is becoming less about the numbers, about, this is what I want to make, this is where I want to live, this is where the title I want to have. It's like, no, I just want to wake up and like live a life that just lights me up. And I'm like,
Hmm.
this is awesome. I'm happy. I'm surrounded by people that I love. I'm doing something that just like brings me joy. It's, giving to other people, and it just feels like it's all in alignment. And so I think that's, how I would describe success for me.
I love it. Yeah, I agree with that. Success is, I think, health, your health, how healthy you are, the health of
Yeah,
your relationships. And I think even when you focus on those things alone, I think the financial part will work itself out. You know what I mean?
completely. Like if you are creating value for other people, like there's no way you're not going to be successful.
Absolutely. I love that. And then one final question. Um, I know there was a lot of big questions already.
Okay, I love big questions. I love love depth.
Okay, there we go. What is the purpose to life?
Ooh, I think the purpose of the life is to experience it. I think a lot of people have this theory about reincarnation or that, human life and life in general is the universe just trying to experience itself through all these different life forms. And I think, the purpose of life is to experience love and joy and connection. And maybe do some good along the way. But yeah, I think we're supposed to just experience it and enjoy it.
I love it. Very beautiful. Purpose of life
Mhm.
is to experience it
Mhm.
and everything that comes with it.
Mhm.
Who knows what happens after all this is said and done, right? Just might
Yeah,
as well enjoy it.
exactly. Enjoy the ride.
There we go. Where can people find you and what are you working on next?
Yeah, so people can find me on TikTok at Chloe Deutscher. I have the world's hardest last name to spell, so sorry, you guys. It's CHLOEDEUTSCHER. And that's the same on Instagram. I do try to answer people on Instagram whenever I can. So that's where you can find me. Yeah, what I'm working on next, well, stay tuned. I've got a couple irons in the fire. So I can't share too much about what I've got going on next, but hopefully one day I'll have some clinics or retreats that you can visit me at.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much, Chloe. And,
Thank you.
it was such a joy to have you on. And thank you for sharing your wisdom and just your knowledge. Really appreciate it. But yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you. That was so much fun. It was really great to meet you and get to know you. And best of luck with everything in the podcast in the future.